Hello, my name is Miso Lee. I'm glad to introduce our research, Activating Self-Attention for Multi-Scene Episode Post-Regression. I'd like to acknowledge Ji-Hwan Kim, who is our second PhD graduate, and advisor Japil He for their significant contributions and invaluable guidance. Before diving into our research, let me first introduce our visual computing lab. My advisor, Professor Japil He, leads our research focusing on various topics in computer vision. We usually work on computer vision with AI, covering images, videos, point clouds, and multimodal data. Computer vision is quite broad, and we also have a large team, so we explore a wide range of research topics. We work both in recognition and generation tasks, such as classification, detection, segmentation, retrieval, localization, and generative models, super resolution, style transfer, and more. Additionally, we do research from a methodological perspectives, such as fusion learning, unsupervised learning, or self-supervised learning. We are highly research-focused, publishing 23 papers in top-tier conferences over the last 3 years. My research focuses on a more traditional topic, localization. If you take my advisor's course, Introduction to Computer Vision, you might be familiar with it. In fact, I first became interested in this field through the class, so now I study geometric 3D vision tasks like feature matching, pose estimation, localization, and others. This task is usually called as visual localization, but a more intuitive term would be camera pose estimation. Here, I brought an example using a picture of Tido. Given this image as input, the goal is to predict how the picture is taken, which means estimating the pose of the camera. Suppose the world coordinate system, namely the map, is predefined. Then, the task is to determine the exact position and orientation within this coordinate system. Mathematically, it is same as the rotation and translation metrics to transform the camera's coordinate system into the world coordinate system. Many recognition tasks in computer vision first require understanding its localization. For example, robotic cleaners and autonomous vehicles need to know their location before they do something. There are many different pipelines for visual localization. One is matching an image to a point cloud, while another compares the query image with other images with known cameras. Traditional pipelines for visual localization are very complex, so I won't go into full detail here. But what I want to say is that a key question is which part of these complex pipelines can be replaced with recent deep learning method. For example, as shown on the right, a current mainstream methods leverage both 2D image and 3D point clouds. In this case, feature is extracted by a deep learning model, while the rest of the pipeline relies on traditional algorithms. However, due to the limitations like computational cost and memory, there's also a lot of research focusing on end-to-end approach like below figures. In our work, we aim to predict the camera absolute pose directly from a single RGB image. Moreover, we want the model to generalize across multiple scenes. Typically, deep learning models for these tasks are trained on a single scene at a time. On the other hand, compressing multiple scenes into a single model is particularly challenging due to the significant differences in scene content and its scale. Previous work tried to adopt database to address this issue, but those didn't work well. However, with the rise of transformer-based architectures, performance has stabilized and memory efficiency has improved by removing database dependency. Yet, we asked a critical question. Is the transformer itself truly memory efficient? In other words, is every component of the model fully activated and effectively utilizing memory to solve the task? To address the memory efficiency of the model, let's introduce the transformer encoder-decoder architecture briefly. Transformers were first introduced in natural language processing. The fundamental architecture is the same as other models. It encodes an input into a high-dimensional vector and decodes it into an output depending on the task. But the key concept is the attention mechanism, which is used in both the encoder and the decoder. That's why the original transformer paper is titled as "Attention is all you need." For today's talk, we focus specifically on self-attention in the encoder and how much the encoder's self-attention actually being used. In vision task, the input is an image. Unlike NLP models that process words, transformers in vision first patchify the image before feeding them into the model. That's why the vision transformer VIT paper is titled as "An image is worth 16 by 16 words." Nowadays, almost every recent vision model, including VIT and DTR and diffusion models, relies on transformer encoders and self-attention mechanisms to process images. This introduction might feel long, but it's important because our research takes a deep dive into the self-attention, and we're just about to get to the core of it. So, what is the self-attention? is a mechanism that accumulates the relationships between elements within an input sequence. Take the example in the NLP task again for easy understanding. To correctly translate the word it, the model should analyze the entire sentence and find words with similar context, embedding that information into a high-dimensional vector. Therefore, we utilize the self-attention mechanism, measuring similarities between each word token and add it to the words again to inject more richer context. The same principle applies to vision tasks. An image is split into patches and tokenized. Then, each input token passes 3 separate linear projections to form query, key, and value. Next, the model computes the similarity between query tokens and key tokens using dot product operations or other vector similarity measurements. Patches within similar context will have higher similarity scores. Finally, these scores are used to weight the value tokens and the results are summed up. Through this process, each image token accumulates more contextual information within each other, refining the image features. Now, we stand at the starting line of our work. In a nutshell, the transformer encoder was not activated due to the attention collapse. Here, attention collapse means low-rank attention maps, low-rank similarity scores, which are known to cause gradient vanishing or training instability. More intuitively, you can see whole image features attend the meaningless few keys, indicating the waste of learning capacity of transformer encoder. We tried to adopt general solutions for recovering the attention collapses, but they did not correct the problem in this task. So, why self-attention does not work in this task and how to solve it? To answer, our main contributions are as follows. First, we investigate the collapse problem from a new perspective, distortion of query key embedding space, and undertrained positional embedding. To solve the problem, we propose a simple but effective solution: query key alignment loss and fixed positional encoding. Now, I will explain our viewpoint, why self-attention models in multi-scene transformer are not utilized. Our main intuition is that the model is to avoid the self-attention mechanism by distorting the query key embedding space due to the learning difficulty. On the face of it, collapsed self-attentions may seem to be the root cause. However, focusing on the query key embedding space, the attention map is just determined by computing similarity scores between queries and keys. In other words, these projection layers are what the model learns, and the attention map is merely a calculated consequence. As such, the collapsed attention map, which induced the modal avoidance comes from the distorted query key space. Therefore, we highlight it to address the problem. When collapsing, queries and keys are completely separated, while a small subset of keys are blended into the query region. What weird is that although queries and keys originate from the same input, but the projection results are separated except few keys. This leads to the attention collapse, since all queries are considered similar to those few keys. We statistically demonstrate that this phenomenon is predominant with our proposed index, purity. Purity is 1 when the query region is composed only with queries, but slightly lower than 1 when few keys jumped in the query region. It shows that the phenomenon we figure out is predominant throughout the whole dataset. Under these conditions, the attention map inevitably collapses as all queries are computed to be similar to those few keys. In other words, the model fails to capture a useful relationship for the task, but just skipped being meaningless itself. Moreover, we point out the importance of appropriate positional encoding and the negative effects of the undertrained positional clues in this task. As self-attention is permutation invariant, which means that not order-sensitive mechanism, positional encoding is widely adopted to the queries and keys to account for the order of the input sequence during self-attention mechanism. It is important to utilize the encoder self-attention models, particularly in camera pose estimation task. Imagine that you estimate the camera pose with shuffled image patches. It would be hard, isn't it? To predict the camera pose, it's not only important to detect features like edges or corners in the image, but it's also critical to know where they are located in the image. Despite its importance, learnable positional embedding in the baseline remains undertrained with the activated self-attention models. This figure shows the visualization results of the distances between the top left image token and the others. In the case of learnable PE, distances between tokens are drastically larger than mathematically fixed one. Instead, tokens which are not aligned at the same height or width were all treated randomly further away. We found that this makes the model even harder to learn geometric relationships between image features by self-attention mechanisms. We guess that the task difficulty contributes to the issue. The model should extrapolate the camera pose from a single RGB image across multiple scenes. Nevertheless, we still expect that image features incorporating global self-relationships will be valuable to estimate the camera pose by capturing silent features such as long edges and corners. Therefore, we design an auxiliary loss which aligns the query region and the key region. By forcing all queries and keys to be mapped into the clues and dance space, they are highly encouraged to interact with each other by self-attention mechanism. It's like putting boxers in the ring and blowing the whistle. Additionally, we go back to the fixed positional encoding instead of advanced learnable one to guide a model to learn geometrical relationships from the beginning of the training. As a result, our model outperforms existing methods in both outdoor and indoor scenes without additional memory during inference, upholding the original purpose of the task, multi-scene absolute pose regression. These results verify that activating self-attention has the potential to become a general model, generating task-relevant features across multiple scenes, regardless of the specific features of each scene. We guess that the task difficulty contributes to this issue. The model should extrapolate the camera pose from a single RGB image across multiple scenes. So, we think it is required to regularize the model in a more direct manner to utilize the self-attention mechanism. Additionally, we discovered that even advanced PE methods are not suitable to the task as they mainly depend on learnable parameters. We assume that purified positional clues, not randomly initialized ones, is very important to stabilize the training of the embedding space for the task. To provide the quantitative evidence that our solution enhances performance by activating the encoder self-attention, we measure attention entropy. We observed that our model gets higher attention entropy, indicating better representation capacity. This validates that our solution successfully induced the transformer-based model to activate the encoder self-attention, thus improving the representation quality of self-attention map. Moreover, the purity of the query region is about half, which means that queries and keys are not separate anymore, but mixed together. Aforementioned, purity is 1 when the query region is composed only with queries, but slightly lower than 1 when few keys jumped into query region. In almost cases, nearly half of the keys belong to the query region, indicating a high degree of interaction between queries and keys. These extensive experiments confirm that we have accurately identified the core issue and effectively addressed it by preventing self-attention collapse and enhancing self-attention activation. It's shown in qualitative result 2. You can see that our model reflects global interactions between queries and keys. As a result, global relationships are incorporated into image features as depicted in the figure. Geometric relations such as long edges are usually obtained, which are the critical points for the camera pose estimation. To summarize, we propose a stronger regularization method against attention calls for a challenging task. We highlight the potential of the self-attention mechanism and the importance of stable positional clues for scene understanding and camera pose estimation. Thank you for listening.